Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? We're close enough to 10 o'clock. In fact, it just turned 10 on my clock. But welcome, and again, a good morning. This is part two of the three-part expert series, the online version for QuickBooks. So hopefully by now you received the PowerPoint presentation this morning so that you can follow along and take notes. I'm Steve Schillig, the moderator, director of the Small Business Development Center. We're headquartered at Kent State University, Tuscarawas. We're part of the Small Business Development Center that offers a host of support and assistance to business owners, including QuickBooks. And happy to have on the call today Ann Sharp, the founder of Excellent Admin, finished both her bachelor's and master's degree from Walsh University, worked in the accounting field for over 10 years, been teaching QuickBooks for 4 years. She has a specialty in small business, and again, most importantly, she's an advisor of the SBDC. So as we go through this process and you have questions that either don't get answered or are specific to your business, please feel free to reach out to either Ann or me, and we'll get you connected. Ann will, at the end of the session, provide her cell phone number and her email address for contact purposes. All Ann's assistance going forward is no charge to you. It's done on a confidential basis, and so please feel free to take advantage of it. This session is being recorded and will eventually be found on our website. Give us a week or two to get it on there, but we'll get it on there for you to listen again if maybe you missed a section or you weren't able to stay on the whole time. If you have suggestions or recommendations or questions today, please feel free to use the chat room. I'll monitor that to the best of my abilities, and we'll try to keep the information flowing so that you're kept up with the group. So this time I'd like to turn it over to Ann, and let me know. Ann, go ahead.
Awesome. So good morning, guys. Today will be probably about an hour long as we're going over some of the last nitty-gritty things that QuickBooks Online can do, some from a customability feature and others from different areas that you might be utilizing based on your subscription. So I'll kind of be bouncing back and forth a little bit into multiple clients of mine because some of them pay for certain things and others don't. So that way we can see all the features that we're going to cover today. We're also going to talk about, project costing and how QuickBooks Online does it. It's not perfect, but it does have the feature to do it. We're going to edit accounts. We're going to edit transactions. We're going to talk about sub accounts. We're going to talk about contractors and payroll. We're going to touch into that a little bit on QuickBooks Online. We're going to show how you can void in QuickBooks Online, the budgeting tools, and then there's some miscellaneous tools that they've added just in the course of some of the updates that they've done that I want to make sure we touch base on. So nothing that should be super complex. When we're going through some of these items, I am going to go over steps that we did in previous PowerPoints. And then obviously next week's course is our final course. We'll be recapping everything we've covered in all the courses from start to finish. We'll do, a bank rec. We'll do entering transactions, downloads, syncing, and we're going to do it all the way through everything we spent all these weeks covering. So next week course will be every bit of 2 hours, if not even pushing it. So I will be moving at a fast pace to make sure that we get everything covered for us. So let's get it logged into our QuickBooks Online here. Okay. And then let's get logged in. Perfect. So let's go into these guys here because they're probably going to have the majority of everything we want to cover today. Okay, so I'm going to jump around and probably not go in perfect order based on importance, I think personally. So we have the budgeting tool in here. So pending which subscription you picked out for QuickBooks Online, you will or will not have the budgeting tool. These guys happen to have it, which is why I wanted to start with them first. So if you go up to our gear icon here, and then you look over here, you have the budgeting. And then you can create multiple budgets. So as you can see, these are multiple years worth of budgets. Okay. So we'll look back at the history of one here. Okay. So when you use the budgeting tool in QuickBooks Online, it's going to utilize all your chart of accounts that you have already set up in QuickBooks. So although you might not separate in budgeting that you're trying to collect money from all these people, you just might have totals. It is going to show all of these accounts. So their budget is rather large. It's done by month over all sorts of different things. Okay. So your budget can be as big or as little as you'd like. And then obviously everything here is typable. And then if you click this little arrow guy, you can copy it and it'll go across the whole row. You can also delete a whole row, you know, so that we don't change anything. So you have that. You can change it pending how you segment your stuff. These guys use classes to segment amongst the 3 classes, so they have multiple ones this way. And you can honestly just type individually if you don't want it to be the average across the board, or if you ended up wanting to do a total, you can just do a total. So you have some settings up here where you can do it monthly, you can look at it quarterly, you can hide blank rows so that it's, you know, more compound. You know, you have some customability features here. And then what you will be able to do with this information is the budget is what you're predicting to make. And then you can pull a budgeting report that shows you what you were predicted to make versus what you actually made so that you can use the budget and adjust the budget accordingly. And then, like I told you, you can do more than one budget and it keeps your history here. And then this is how you would run a budget versus an actual report. So you can run the overview, you can run the actual, you can copy it and then just make some tweaks and adjustments to it pending your industry. You can import a budget. So if you build it in Excel, which most of us probably do, you can import that information inside of here. It just has to be built a specific way. And let's look at, I'll download the sample so that you guys can see the template it would give you. And then you can see that it's by month. And then obviously all our chart of accounts again are here. So you could fill it in across and then import it. This is just as much work if you're not already using a template that you have as just entering it into QuickBooks Online. You can always download it. You don't have to worry about losing something. You know, it gives you some idea there. But if you're doing the accounting properly in the budget feature, then you have the ability to pull these for your board meetings that you might have and be able to see where you guys fell. This will be a good way to look at what COVID did to impact the business overall based on what you budgeted, pending your industry and those types of things. So that's going to be the budgeting tool for us. And then let's see here. Okay, perfect. So then let's talk about payroll. So we're going to jump over here to payroll. So if you look at the payroll portal, QuickBooks Online has the ability to run payroll. It also has the ability to help pay workers' comp if you set it up and integrate it properly. And then it also has the ability to manage contractors. I don't normally encourage small businesses to manage and do their own payroll unless it's something that you have experience with, because it is quite a liability. But QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop have come a long way with building basically error-proof wizards to be able to allow you to make sure that you're filing all the things you need to do as long as you understand how the portal works. So what they do is they have streamlined it where if you spend, I think the online version is like $85 a month, they'll make sure you do all your quarterly reports, all your monthly stuff. They'll pay the taxes. You can sync them up to your online portals and they'll pay the taxes and stuff for you. And then obviously it generates all the reports to do the annual reconciliations and things that you would need to do that. So when you turn on the payroll portal, you get that. You don't have to turn on the payroll portal to be able to manage your contractors inside of QuickBooks. So contractors is something that they just give you no matter what happens. And the reason that they do this is because in the small business world, the realization is that almost everybody we pay is contractors. And the way you know if it's a contractor or not is the way the business entity name is set up. Okay. So if you're paying an individual to do work and you pay them more than $600, they technically are due to get a tax form at the end of the year that would be called a 1099. QuickBooks creates a wizard to prepare 1099s and puts it based on the information that you put in. So if you were to add a contractor, so right now we have a bunch of contractors in here. Here's myself, okay? You can pay contractors with direct deposit if you set up their bank accounts inside of here. It does take them a day to do that for it to process, but you can do it. So, as long as you want to do it around holidays, you're obviously able to do that. You can create expenses for them or create bills or write checks to them. But if you just click on one of them, and I'll just use myself as an example here, you can see my payment history. So I don't actually send these guys a bill anymore, right? They pay me when they've reached the terms of spent their money to do it over and over again. So on here, I have expenses that are coming directly from the bank. So if I go over here to banking and I scroll down, all these transactions that we have here, which would be the transactions that are coming through your bank feed, you would be able to take these transactions and apply them to the proper person. So I'm trying to find mine. But it doesn't seem to be in here. They may have already actually categorized it. But if you take this transaction here, say it's this one, and you were to change it to pay me. So if you put my actual name in here, Bell Solutions, and categorized it however you wanted to categorize it, okay? And then you hit add, it would show back up on the payroll side under the contractors. It would show up under the detail here, okay? So you don't necessarily have to pay them inside of this portal. You just have to make sure that anything that's paying to them as it's clearing the bank check-wise, if you don't use it inside of here to print it, that it gets categorized under the right person. So then if you go ahead and try to prepare 1099s, and it may actually let me do, it wants to sell me a print kit, which I don't necessarily need, but I wanted to see if it would let me do last year's because we did do last year's. It doesn't look like it's going to let me actually do last year's to show you, but it gives you a wizard, and inside of it, if you've ever seen a 1099 form, which you guys probably have, you have different boxes that you can categorize your income. So other other compensation is like box 7, and then you have attorney income, which can be another one. If you get royalties, that can be another one. And so when you map these, you pick which one you want them to be at so that you can make the adjustments. So now, how do you add contractors here? If you've never put a contractor in, this screen will have a big icon in the middle that says add a contractor. If you have contractors here, then you want to add a contractor this way. And what it's going to do is it's automatically going to send them an email that prompts them to fill out the proper documents for you to have what you need to do the 1099s at the end of the year. Now, everybody's like, oh, I have everything electronic, no big deal. You still need to print the tax form that they fill out on here, filled out, and keep in your office in a folder. I know that sounds monotonous, but it is really important. If somebody came in and were to check you for your W-9s, your W-4s, and your I-9s for your employees and your contractors, and you didn't have them, it's a fine for every single one you don't have, okay? They also need to be filed separately. So your I-9s, which is your immigration form to prove that you're working with somebody that is a registered American citizen, right? Has to be separate from the actual employees folder, which then can have their 1099 or W-9 and their W-4 inside of it. So that's a preference on you guys on where you keep it, but you do have to be able to supply it if it was something they were looking for. And I keep both. I have it electronically, I've got it scanned in, I've got it in a payroll system, and then I've also got a printed copy in a locked filing drawer. Okay, so just make sure that you do remember that just because they fill this out, still print a copy for your office so you have it. Keep it in their, employee folder that you document when you give raises or if there's any disciplinary actions, because if you ever need to prove any of that stuff, you want to have it somewhere. Okay, so you would type in somebody's thing, add their email, and then all it does is send them an email to fill out the form. Once they've filled out the form, you get a notification that it's filled out and they're ready to get paid, and they get flipped to look like this, where you can pay with direct deposit and you have an option to adjust them. Until they fill that form out, you do not have the ability to do anything inside of this contractor portal. Okay, so I want to make sure you understand that they have to fill out that form in order to be able to make the adjustments you need inside of QuickBooks. Now, for payroll has its own access with QuickBooks Online. You have to call, you get a better customer service number when you do payroll, and you would hit get started. And again, you have to enter in all your employees' information, which you should already have if you'd be having payroll and you've already hired somebody. And then if you're moving payroll mid-year, it's going to want year-to-date wages and stuff like that. And then obviously, once you've got this set up, this opens up to where you can add employees. You could see their history, you can print pay stubs, everything like that. Then you get into taxes, where it's going to track. Right now, we'd only show sales tax, but it would then open up to show your payroll taxes. And again, it has a wizard inside of here where if you use the payroll portal, you can create your own W-2s as long as you order their paper and you download them properly, and then obviously stick the pre-lined paper in so that it prints among those lines. Okay. QuickBooks Desktop, the only benefit they have over QuickBooks Online is that you don't have to use the lined paper. You can actually tell it to print with lines, but QuickBooks Online does not have that feature. So if you're going to do it, make sure you buy the right paper. And obviously, you have to send a copy that's read to the IRS at the end of the year and that type of thing. So or Social Security Administration, I guess I should say. So you do have a couple of moving parts when it comes to doing the payroll. Then there comes the workers' comp side. So this is a newer update that they added in where they can help you set up your workers' comp and manage your workers' comp and make sure that you have the best rate and get quotes on that. So if you're totally don't have workers' comp, never looked at it, the application that you do on the workers' comp website is not super hard. You just get bombarded with sales calls because there's a lot of companies out there right now that can be your agents for your workers' comp account. And what that means is that if an employee were to cut themselves and you had to send them to the ER, they got to the ER, they said they cut themselves at work, right? Now they're going to want to come after you guys to get the bills paid instead of penalizing the employee. It becomes a workers' comp claim, and your agents are the ones that dive in and determine, well, was it an error on your work environment or was it an error on the employees not being careful? And then who covers what costs, and then how much is the damage due? So your agent goes to bat for you. So having a good agent is really important. Now, there are organizations like Care Comps and stuff like that that save you money as your agent pending your industry. So for farms and some of the higher machine shops, some of the higher industries, they give you credits on certain things that is totally worth having them as an agent. The state of Ohio allows you to be your own agent as well. So you don't have to hire a third party to be your agent. So for example, if you went through this way, QuickBooks Intuit is going to be your agent. And they obviously are partnered with this Intego. So that those would be the people you would call if something happened that you needed them to back your company for. But you can do that yourself as well. Again, not something I super recommend. Workers' comp claims tend to be few and far between. And so it's hard waters to swim in. You obviously don't want to get set up in something that you can't manage if something were to happen. So I do encourage you to use an agent, but I do want you to know that all the options out there that you don't have to have an agent in the state of Ohio. Okay. So that's how we're going to do contractors. And then obviously we talked about payroll. So that was the big area we wanted to talk about here, and showing you that obviously it will impact your tax folder as well. Now let's talk about editing accounts and transactions, and then obviously this kind of goes into voiding as well. So if we go down here to our accounting and we go to chart of accounts. So this is the chart of accounts I keep referring to that was in your budget feature as well. And if you go up here to where it says new, we would add a new account. But if you click these arrows that are next to an account, we can click edit an account. Okay. An editing account then means that you can change it. So the most common error when we're entering something, and let me flip into a new one here because I was just working on somebody that it happened to. The most common error you get is that you don't classify the item that you're trying to create the right way. So if I go down here to accounting and I go to my chart of accounts again, so I want to add a new one here and I want to call it, it's a credit card. Okay. So if I had put a name here, it would say credit card. It would have overrode what it was. And so I want this to be credit on bank. Okay. And that's who I have this credit card with for this client. Okay. And I can hit save and close. Well, so say, as I told you before, I always like to put the last 4 digits of the account number in. So we obviously added another one. So I want to edit this and click on it and dash and say that the account number is added so I can save and close, because I have 2 Credit One banks. So I need to make sure that I know which account goes with which. But a lot of times when you create one, it can not go under the correct thing. So like cash on hand is accurate. Credit cards are accurate. Let me see if I can find one that didn't come through properly. So these are just all expenses. So here's a good one. So if you have this one, let me hit edit. So it's an expense, okay? And then you get to describe down here where it's going to go. And this in QuickBooks Online determines where you see it on the profit and loss statement in what order, okay? So you know it's an expense, you called it rent, right? But you still got to make sure you click rent again so that it goes to the same spot. So if you had done like other business expenses, you're still going to see the name rent, but instead of being under a category that is going to be for all your rents, whether it's building rent or renting equipment or anything like that, it's going to be under other business expenses. So it's just going to be in a different spot. QuickBooks Online is the only software that this does this with. And so a lot of times when you do an expense, it defaults to like advertising and marketing. Well, that's great, but when you go out to eat, it may not be advertising and marketing. So this is the area where you have to remember to adjust, and probably the most area that you'll spend a lot of time changing because you realize it's not where you want to see it, or your accountant wants to see it in a different spot. And so you're going to be editing that. Okay. So that's how we edit the accounts. Now, if we want to make it a sub account, so let's find a good one that would be a good sub account. Let's do utilities. We're going to do some sub accounts of utilities. So let's add a new one. We're going to call it an expense here and see how it defaulted to advertising and promotion. So this, I want to find utilities. And then we want this to be telephone. And we want this to be a sub-account of utilities. And I'm going to save and new this. Okay, so then it has here again expenses, utilities, and then you have name again. So it defaulted to utilities. So we're going to say that this is Dominion. And again, we want this to be a sub-account of utilities. And then our third one here is going to be Spectrum. And see how it says utilities and then you have these indented ones. So that means it's creating it as a sub-account for you. So if I hit save and close, now inside of here, you've got this account and then you've got the sub-accounts. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're going to see a total number for Dominion, a total number for Spectrum, and a total number for telephone. But you're also going to see a grand total number for utilities. So if at the end of the year, your accountant doesn't care what you spent at Spectrum and Dominion, he can just total those into a bucket for utilities, which is going to make your tax return look less detailed, but that's the way it works. You have a utility bucket on your tax return and you throw everything in it. The only time you see the difference is if you're doing home office deduction, and obviously then they have to determine how much of it is for home office use versus personal use, or how much is business use. But you want to know month to month, especially during the winter, how much does your gas bill and electric bill go up, because you need to make sure that you budget for that, because it fluctuates, especially in the fall, when one day it's 68 degrees like it's going to be in a few days and the next day it's 30. You know, it's coming on and off and on and off and pushing to get warmed back up or cooled back down, whatever it might be. So you obviously want to monitor those trends and use them for budgeting. So that's going to be how you create a sub account and how you edit an account. Now, if we want to edit a transaction, so if I'm going to click into banking, I'm going to go to the bank register here. So for this one, like I want to edit this. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to put a payee in because I didn't actually do that before. So I'm going to add this payee. Oh, it says I have it already. Oh, here he is. Okay. So I edited this payee. The amount stays the same. The account stays the same. And now I can hit save. And then it's going to say that it was downloaded, no problem. If it had been reconciled, you'd get another warning that said it had been reconciled. That's not an issue there. But all you do is have to hit click on it and you can make changes, or if you want to click edit here, it'll pop up the transaction. Again, you can do all the changes you need to do from inside of here. So that's how you're going to edit a transaction. So now let's talk about voiding. Okay, you can edit and void everything inside of QuickBooks. Okay, why do we void versus delete? I encourage voiding versus deleting because it keeps a history for you. So if you void a invoice, all it does is take the dollar amount that the invoice would have been and zeroed it out. It doesn't delete the description that you put in that said, I did this for Joe Schmo for 14 hours and 22 minutes at X amount of dollars an hour. It totals out to be $3,000, but then we bartered work and yada, 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 right? You want that history in order for you to go back and go, well, yeah, we did have an agreement. You met your end of the bargain, or we bartered for this much. You owe me the remainder of this, but you keep that history, right? So you want to void it and just zero it out so that it doesn't affect your financials, but you don't lose the history of what you did in case the customer comes back later. You can void journal entries, does the same thing. I don't want to lose where I had thought I needed to debit and credit, but I don't need the numbers in there that affect my financials. So if I void it, it just zeroes out and keeps the data. You can also void an expense. So if for some reason you got something in twice, and that might be because you entered it and it came through the bank, and then for some weird reason it didn't match together, which happens, then you want to make sure that you void out the wrong one. So here you have the option to void or the option to delete, and it's always going to be under this more option. Okay. So you have to click the more button. So if we go out of here and let's go into expenses. You have a void option here for an expense. You have a delete option here. But if I hit view edit, you still have your more box right here as well. So you want to make sure that you use that. If we go over into journal entries, again, you have your little guy up here. Hang on, I probably actually have to create a journal entry for us so that it will do. Under this make reoccurring, there, when you have a journal entry, he doesn't have any in here. There will be a more button right here that you could click that would be void and everything like that as well. And then like I showed you before, if you had other history ones that you needed to go back, you can click on this guy here and click on each one there to determine which ones you need. But you're looking for that more button, okay? And you can do that if you go in here to enter bills. Let's pick a vendor here. Here's your more button. See how it came up after you put it in? Your journal entry will do the same thing. Okay, and then you have your delete and void options here. Okay, so again, I encourage voiding. Now, what if you need to void checks because your check numbers got off or you left them in the printer and you printed something else on them, because that happens. I've done that myself. So I'm going to delete this because we don't need this anymore. What do? So QuickBooks Online is not the most user-friendly for mass voiding. So the way I've found to do it is if I go under here and I go to check and I click, I'll type in like check number 1000, okay? And I'll say like, put this and ask my accountant. I don't do anything else. I can hit more and void, and it's gonna ask me if I wanna void this. And the answer is yes. And then it'll tell me it was voided successfully. Okay, so if you're trying to void or delete something, you get a couple steps again to make sure you're not doing something that you didn't want to do originally. And you have to hit OK. But it gets tricky. If you noticed, I hit no the first time, and because the button was green, if I wasn't reading or paying attention, and then you have to go back and void again to click the right button because it's trying to make sure that you don't delete something that you don't want to delete. But now you'll see here that it has your check number. It tells you it's voided. And then if you go up in here to go to your, let's go to my chart of accounts here. And then is it going to be in here? Here is your check showing in your check registry as voided. So you can see that it's going to take it out. You have the ability to still check it off in your check registry so that if somebody ever tried to use that check number, which is why we want to void the check number, you know that it's a fraudulent check because you voided out that check number, unless you accidentally then order the same check numbers twice, which happens. But you want to make sure that you're keeping these in here. Now you can do it from inside of here. Like if you wanted to add a check from here, you could do it. You'd have to hit save, then you'd have to hit edit, and then you can void it from inside of here. So that's why I always just do it from the expense screen so that I don't have to do multiple steps through multiple screens to get it to be voided. But it's not the most streamlined way to void out transactions, but it is still very important that you void checks. Okay. Do we have any questions about voiding?
Not seeing any.
Okay. So now let's talk about a couple of the miscellaneous things that we have. Okay. So a lot of people are like, how can I just search QuickBooks for anything, no matter what account I'm looking at, to find exactly what I'm looking for? Okay. So there's two answers to this question. You can't, technically, and you have some snippets you can look at. So if you've used this banking tab and all your transactions that would be floating here are in the account, okay, and you go into the bank register, you have a little filter guy here. You can search by name, you can search by amount, you can search by date, and you can apply. So for me, I'm just going to search by an amount. It gives me every transaction that I had in the history of this bank account or credit card for $41.92. Okay. Now I can drop this down and change this to another credit card, and I still have the ability to filter. And I can also change it to my bank account and search the same thing. Okay. And it'll show me what falls under that. Now you can clear that, but this is your search guy. But this only works for transactions that are actually entered inside of QuickBooks. So you've categorized them from the syncing screen to be able to view them on this side. And then you have to pick from here. Okay. Now, if you go in through banking and you look at rules, and a lot of times we create rules, okay, you get a list of the rules that you've created, which we've talked about. Now, I want to edit this rule because I can take it from being automatically into taken out, but I also can change it from, instead of being just this Indigo account, I can change it to all my accounts. So now it's going to, anytime I go to KFC and I buy chicken, right, it's going to be a meals and entertainment, no matter where it comes from what account that's on QuickBooks. So this is a way to edit your rules to do more than setting up a rule for each different account you have. It's just across the board. It's going to keep your accounting more together and simplify it for certain things that you want as rules. So we've created rules through this process, but we've not actually changed them to be on multiple accounts. So you obviously want to be able to do that. Okay. So that's the second thing I wanted to talk about that's going to change the game when it comes to the banking. The other thing they added, if you have somebody in here as an accountant, so like I'm the accountant for all the clients that I work with, that gives me the ability to undo reconciliations, because the only person that can undo those other than the accountant is the super admin. And so the super admin is you as the owner of the company. And so, which is good and bad. It's great when your employee has to ask you about it if it's something that they need done. It stinks because it does cap them when it could be something simple that just they did by accident and just need to redo. So, just pay attention to that. But under the accountant thing, you can send requests to your accountant. Hey, I want to see X, Y, and Z, right? You can share documents with your accountant. So like if you get payroll notices or anything like that, you can upload and use this portal to communicate with your accountant. Now, I don't have anybody using it personally. This is very new, something they've added probably in the last month, but I'd be curious to see how streamlined it is. And I can imagine it probably gives us the ability to talk back and forth so that you know that something was completed, because a lot of times as accountants, we do exactly what you ask, but we don't always send you the follow-up that says that it was done. And so I know I get frustrated sometimes when I'm like, did that get finished? Because you feel like you're in limbo. And at the same time, I feel silly because I had to ask, right? But it's just another way to streamline some communication and maybe put in specific documentation for your accountant on things. And you know that it's kind of housed in a safe. And once you've uploaded it, obviously you can look back at it and make sure that it was done. Okay. So you've got this little portal here. This is great. Now you probably can share this between teammates or bookkeepers as well. I can tell you that when somebody is just on here as a user, the portal looks different than what we have here now. And so it's really going to be just what you're trying to accomplish and what we want to do. Okay. So the last thing I want to spend a little bit of time on is project costing. Okay. So I was digging around on here last night trying to make sure that I was in the right portal to do the project costing. And I think that what happened is QuickBooks changed their users so that you have to be a certain user to have the project costing. Okay, so bear with me. Obviously, the directions I've used before, but it does look like they've updated this portal a little bit. So I did make some adjustments to that, but it will take me a minute to fumble around in here and figure out exactly where this was. Especially for what I'm doing with being in the accountant side and not just in the normal. So let's look. Ooh, they added a task manager in here too. So you can monitor the projects and the tasks that you're doing. That's really awesome. So projects is now over here on the side. So a lot of people use project costing when they're trying to make sure that they make money on what they're offering. Okay. So I see this a lot in manufacturing or when you're reselling something specifically. But obviously you want to go to projects, and then I don't have any projects in here for these guys. So I'm actually going to go to a client that does have projects so that we can. Oh, he doesn't have it turned on. So as you can see here, like now projects isn't showing here. So it is definitely something they updated based on your subscription. So I'll go back over here. We'll just do a new project so that we can go through that. Project costing in QuickBooks Online is like using a purchase order in QuickBooks Desktop. You know what you intend it to be, so you send an estimate out to make sure that it works, and then you show your profit, okay? So if we want to start a project, I'm going to call this training. And the customer can be me, because why not? And I'm going to click save. So now I've activated the portal here. So again, if you've got it, just like the budgeting tool, if you're in the right subscription, you'll have the ability to have this project costing. It starts over here on the side under projects, and then now I've added a project, and you can add multiple projects and edit projects, okay? So then you want to attach an invoice to the project. So this goes back into when you actually create the invoice, making sure you're selecting the right customer, and then the customers are main accounts and their projects are sub accounts. So this list can become rather large if you're doing 20 different projects for every customer. So I wouldn't suggest maybe project costing absolutely everything, but project cost your major items so that you have them here, okay? So your invoices, you can create an invoice inside of the project costing side. Then you could do hours. This goes into payroll and contractors, making sure who you're tracking, making sure they're telling them that they want the customer in this report. And then obviously you can do subscriptions there, and then any expenses you would incur. Okay. So this then on here, when you do it, you have a customer and a project option here. Now, once you've turned on projects, so we turned on projects for this customer, if I go to enter a bill in, I'm going to have this option here now to add a customer or a project onto that. Every journal entry, you're going to have the ability to add a customer or a project on there. So you can do project costing on everything across the board if that's something that you want to do. But you do want to make sure that if you're doing it, it stays consistent. It can't be for some and not for others. But you obviously want to make sure you're doing the adjustments. And then is this a billable thing or not? This is going to help create invoices. So when you create an invoice for that project, you're going to have items that are going to be reminded to bill if it's a billable expense that you incurred. So contractors would be billable expenses. So you want to make sure that you bill out for your contractors so that you get your money, make sure you get your recoup your cost. Okay. Then you can make it reoccurring. And if you want to scroll down, you have the ability to memo things, add lines. You can add attachments in here like we've done before. You can make it reoccurring. And obviously, again, if this was saved and something changed, you could hit the more button that would pop up right here and you could click edit or void or delete. Okay. So this is going to be your project costing. And then it'll show you your total income versus your total expense and your projects, your profit on that project. And your list up here, this is the only project we have, but you would be able to say that it's in process, it's completed or canceled. And then you can see all the transactions if you want to see the details. Okay. And this goes all the way back to estimates. You can create an estimate in QuickBooks, you can flip it to an invoice, and then you can mark it paid. But obviously you don't have to. Your activity, and then you can look at your project reports. So you can look at the profitability and stuff. So this opens up another list of things that you can do with projects to make that you have everything planned out. Now I want to look at I want to see which package you have to be able to do the project. So I'm going to look here. Because a lot of us are either in the simple start or the plus, which is, the middle of the road guy. And so there seems to be some things. So you have to be the middle of the road guy to get the project tracking. And then let's look at budget. Where's our budget? It looks like you might even need to be advanced for the budget. So they've made it a little bit harder. So those are when you decide if that's something that you want to do based on pricing, which package is going to be worth it for the features you want. If you want it all integrated, then it might be worth being in the premium package to have the project costing and the budget feature and then all the bank accounts and everything here. If you don't, you budget because that's what we're supposed to do once a year, but we don't use it to make business decisions, or you don't have to report it to a board, it may not be worth spending $75 a month for a feature that you update once a year and we don't really ever look back at, unless there's an emergency like, COVID hit and we had to really do some evaluations of cash flow. That's just something that you have to decide. I don't do project costing probably to the magnitude that I should. At the very beginning, I was really serious about it. I wanted to see how we were doing and make sure we were pricing appropriately. But as you get bigger and you just know that you're guaranteed to make the money and that your bills are still paid, it can be something that falls to the wayside. So it really determines on your size. I see it a lot in manufacturing when we're making sure we're billing clients properly and keeping hours done in the right time frame. But you can do it in, repair shops. They do it a lot. They want to make sure that what they bill out for the repairs to your car, they obviously had enough labor included in that and those types of things. So a lot of those areas may do a lot more project costing. I would say bakeries, food restaurants, stuff like that would be another good one to do project costing, because you want to make sure that obviously as some of our prices have increased on certain things, and maybe you didn't increase the sales price of your cookies or your hamburgers, but your cost went up, you want to make sure you're still making a profit in there on what you're selling. So it could be something that doesn't need to be done this magnitude, but it's something that we probably should do over the course of the life of the business, basically. So those were some of the miscellaneous things I wanted to talk about today. The last little bit of nitty gritty that we had based on the features that QuickBooks Online has. QuickBooks Online is very straight and to the point. Put the transactions in, categorize them, process your reports, pay your people, make sure that you can see everything. And then that's pretty much it. There's nothing else that you really need to do from an accounting perspective in here. Pay your bills, do that type of stuff. But they did add some features like the project costing, the tasks, the accountant, talking to your accountant to make things a little bit easier. The ability to edit your rules and your accounts makes it easier too. I know for me, like as soon as I realized that we could change all the rules to show on every account, I instantly went in and changed them all, because we're creatures of habit. It doesn't matter what card you paid for it with, you probably use the same vendor more than once. So it just saves you from having to check everything all the time. And then your financials are cleaner and it's less labor intensive for you. So like I said, for next week, we're going to go from start to finish, everything we've covered in all the courses. And we'll do bank recs and everything because it's the perfect time. We just rolled into a new month. We'll be able to do all of that for everybody, and you guys will be able to see it. And then obviously I'll open it up for questions, and then that would complete our course, and you guys are fully certified in QuickBooks Online. So I'll leave this over to Steve Schillig here to do some last remarks, but I would say we've covered everything for today.
Okay, Ann, thank you very much. Certainly some good information, so I appreciate it. I don't see any questions, but if you have a minute, maybe we'll just stay on to see if anybody that's still on the call would have a direct or specific question.
Yep, absolutely. And let me go ahead and put my email and phone number in here for you guys. Ignore the 330 at the end of the email, guys. I'm not sure how I hit enter and it was a little delayed on my end.
And you'll find that information in the chat room. And I also put our website there. So if you want to go back and listen to any recordings or catch this recording again, so. Okay, well, I think that's just about it. And thanks again, and we'll see you a week from today.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Ann.
No problem. Bye.